Hey everybody, welcome to class. What we're going to take a look at this week is working with color in Illustrator. So we're going to take a look at the lesson. I'm going to walk you through some of the steps on this. Really the big idea is just kind of getting organized with this. So it's really a way of kind of working a little bit faster. Nothing super like groundbreaking. It's just kind of some different palettes, different panels, different ways of looking at color and thinking about how you can kind of get some quick edits made. And then when we're done, we're going to do a quick review of the logo tracing part 2. I'll pop that up and kind of walk you guys through that. Pretty much more of the same from last week with pen tool stuff. So to get started, what I first want to take a look at is in Blackboard. You'll see under the lesson 8 that there's the start files right here. You can click and download them. Here's also the tracing practice part 2. I'm going to download that right away as well. This is what your start files are going to look like for this week. So what we're going to take a look at is using a couple different panels, a couple different tools to kind of take a look at how we can apply color in different ways to objects. So here's my start part 1. Here's my start part 2. We're going to take a look at how we can kind of use a different tool on that. And to get rolling, the first thing I want to think about is kind of color modes and how they're going to work on a document. So when we first make a new document, if you do a file new command, you'll always notice that part of the creating a new document setting is the color mode, how it outputs. And you'll notice that there's really just 2 colors that you could choose from, 2 color modes. The first one is RGB, red, green, blue. Those are the colors of light. That is what you would be using if you were designing for screens. So think of like mobile devices, websites. If you're designing like assets for television or video, that would be included there. Second one would be CMYK. That's what this document is set up for. CMYK is for print. So that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you have a printer at home, that's what you, if you pop it open, you'll see like you'll probably have either all 4 of those cartridges, or you'd have like a black and then one that has just cyan, magenta, and yellow in it. And that's really the idea of the 2 different color modes. So because we're designing for print, we're going to be working in that CMYK color mode, and we'll be starting off there. Now, what I want to do first is I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I want to take a look before we get going too far at some of the tools we'll be using today. First up, we're going to be using this live paint bucket tool. That's hidden underneath your shape builder. We'll come back to that in a little bit. We're also going to be using this eyedropper tool to kind of copy colors or copy properties from one object to another. Obviously, we'll also be using our select and direct select tool. If you come over to the right-hand side, let me make my screen a little bigger here so more room to work. You'll see I have this little color panel, and I can also show options. So it'll actually show me how the color mixes. I've got this color guide. We'll come back to that. And then I've got this swatches panel. This is really going to be an important one. There's some pre-built swatches on here that you'll see, and we're going to start applying these onto art, custom. You'll see that there's kind of like a couple different colors that are applied to this. And we're going to take a look at building out those custom colors and kind of recoloring all the art on this page. So what I want to do first, though, is I just want to apply an existing color onto art. So if I select an object, and I'm going to select the red body of my guitar here, I'm going to select this kind of peach color and apply it on there. And again, super straightforward, real easy to do. But what I can also do is create custom colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look on this little side panel here. And if I select it, you'll see that I've got a fill and a stroke. My stroke is that kind of yellow, my fill is gray. So what I could do is I could just apply any color to this. So if I click on, say, any of my oranges, I could apply that. Or what I could do is I could actually make custom color. Now, the way I'm going to do that is by going in to my color or to my swatches panel, and you'll see on the bottom, it almost looks like a new layer icon like you might see in Photoshop. But if I click on new swatch, what it's going to do is it's going to pop open a box. It's going to base off of my past selection, but it's going to ask me, what do I want to do? How do I want to mix this color? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make this a little bit more of a yellow on the side of this guitar. And the way I'm going to do that is by punching in different numbers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 3% cyan. For magenta, I'm going to put in 2%. I'm going to bump my yellow way up. I'm going to take that up to 98. And then for my black, I'm going to leave that at 0. Now notice when I select it, there's this little global button. Now, if you take a look in your swatches panel, you see how there's like a little white triangle here? What that's doing is that's telling me it's global, which means that if I edit that swatch, it'll automatically update that color across the entire document. So whenever I create swatches, I always make them global. So that if I'm designing a logo and the client changes their mind and I'm using that color in multiple spots, if it's a global color, I can update it once and then it'll auto apply to the entire document instead of having to go to each individual object and update it that way. So when I click OK, I can give this thing a name. So right now it's just the generic color mix. Say I wanted to call this guitar yellow, or whatever I want to call it. I can give these things custom names. But when I click OK, we'll now see that that yellow shows up inside my swatches panel as a global swatch. So Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at kind of some of my different colors here and apply some different stuff. What I want to do is kind of just build like an overall color palette here. So here on my circle, I'm going to click on this black circle. Again, I'm going to try and create a different color for this one. So let's just go ahead and make another new color. For this one, I'm going to make it 0 for cyan and 0 for black. And I'm going to make this orange. So I want lots of magentas and yellows. Those mix really well together as oranges. So 84 and 100, it actually landed right on it. It's a set of the global color. You can click OK. And now it automatically applies color and saves it right inside my panel as a new color swatch. Now, if I wanted to go back and edit it, I can always double click on a color. So say like here, I didn't give this guy a name. Maybe I'll just call this like dark orange. I can click OK. And then it applies that dark orange. It gives it a name. If I hover over it, I'll see that as kind of a reminder of what exactly it is. And now I can take a look at applying that to different spots. So I'm going to click on this guy right here, that little blue one. I'm going to switch this out. I'm going to make that dark orange. I kind of like that color. So far so good. I think that's looking all right. What I want to do next is I want to create a copy of a swatch, and I want to start applying kind of some different colors here. So I'm going to take this dark orange that I've created, and what I can do is with this, if I click on it and drag it down onto my new swatch, see how that little plus icon? It'll make a duplicate of it, and now I can just take those existing colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this down a little bit. I'm going to try and make this kind of like more of like a mustardy looking color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little cyan into that. I'm going to take my magenta, I'm going to drop that down to about 23. And then for my yellow, I'll leave that at 100, and I'll leave my black at 0. So now I've got that. It applies it as a color. I can also double click on it, say I wanted to actually call this thing mustard, and give it a name. And now as I'm going, I can kind of start applying these. So now I've got kind of my bright yellow, I've got here my mustard yellow. Now as I'm looking at all these colors, I can kind of start looking at like overall. I think what I want to do is kind of give this thing like got a little bit more of like a consistent look to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit that global swatch, that dark orange that I built. I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. So I'm going to double click on that thing. I'm going to bring that magenta value down. I'm going to set that down to about 64, click OK. And you see how because it was a global swatch, it updated everything across the entire object. So now what I can do is, I think I'm going to apply that onto this green one too. So I can kind of like this echoing effect with my colors. Now, what I want to do is, I got this box here, this pink, and I want to kind of make these all have like an orangish feel to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select on this one. And because I already had a previous color in there, it was this one right here, this kind of like peach color. I'm going to double click. It's called orange, but it's not really that orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update my color a little bit. I'm going to knock down my magenta to 29. I'm going to bump up my yellow 100. And notice I can check preview, and that'll show me what that'll actually look like. So this is a lot more of an orange. I also want to make this in a global color. So I'm going to update that. And now that looks good. And what I want to do is I'm going to apply it here. I want to kind of almost give it like an echoing effect. So I think that's looking pretty good. And then the last thing on this blue, what I want to do is I want to pick a new color for this one, but rather than using like specific numbers, as I'm doing this, like I'm not pulling these numbers out of thin air, I'm just reading them out of the book. They're pre-selected. So if I wanted to, what I could do is select colors off of a color picker. So with that blue guitar shape kind of selected, I come over here onto my tool panel, I'm double click on this blue box, and it pulls open this whole color picker. So here I can grab all these different shades, or what I can do is I can adjust this slider to get me into kind of different zones of color. So I'm going to get mine kind of down into like this orange area, and then I'm going to select in here and kind of select maybe like a little bit muddier of an orange, kind of just brown, and I'll click OK. Now it applies that color onto that without having this selected. Now, if I do like this color, I can also make this thing a new swatch. So with this thing selected, right up here, it's showing me my fill. I'm going to click and drag it down here. And by dragging it down, it's made a copy of that color. If I want to use that again, I can double click it. I can give it a name. So I'm going to call this burnt orange. I'm going to make it a global color. So if I reapply it, and now kind of part of that little color palette that I built and customized right inside my panel. So that's really the first step as far as creating new colors, creating new objects, or creating new colors and applying them to objects and kind of customizing them to whatever you think is going to work best. I think here, like that gray looks a little off. Let's go ahead and throw in one of those global colors. I'm really happy with how that's turning out. So that's kind of step one of taking an object, creating new colors, new swatches, saving them, making them global. So if you change your mind, it auto updates across everything. So what I want to do next is I want to take a look at working with something called a spot color. So I'm going to zoom in on my little guitar here up at the top. And what I want to do is I'm going to start by adding in a spot color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my guitar, and underneath this little library icon, underneath my swatches, it shows all these different types of libraries. And what there is inside of there is something called a Pantone library. What the Pantone color system is a standard universal color set that has colors kind of listed in number order. So that, say, like today we're going to look at Pantone 137, and we want to see it under the solid coded. So if I take a look, I've got these color books, and these are all different accepted designer specific color books. Now, the reason why you pick this color is that if I pick 137 and I send this to a printer, I can tell them to match 137. So when it comes out of the printer on their end, they can hold up the color book and make sure it's that exact shade. So what I'm going to take a look at is I'm going to do Pantone, and I'm going to look at Pantone plus solid coded. So if I click on this, what it does is it pops open this whole little panel. It doesn't look like much, but when I start expanding this thing out, there's tons and tons of colors inside this Pantone library. Now, as I know I have a specific number, and a lot of times your customers will spec out what that number is, I can hover over it and I can see Pantone 137. So if I click on it, what it does is it applies it on my object. I can close this now because it saved it. Take a look, and let me zoom in a little bit here. You can see that it's just like the other globals, but it's got that little dot in the corner, which means that this isn't editable like the other ones. If I double click on it, all I can really do is take a look at what the mode is and kind of how the properties look for it. So with that thing selected, what I'm going to do is I got it saved. I got it put in there once I had it applied. And now what I can do is if I go into my properties, so I'm going to go up into my properties here, I can adjust the tint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this circle. I'm going to hold my shift key and I'm going to click on this one too. I'm going to apply that color to it. Now I don't give you the same color because if I click away, it just kind of disappears. So let me undo that. I'm going to apply my color, but I'm going to leave it selected, and I'm going to come up here into my properties. You can do this from window down to properties, or you can select your little properties button up here. Now, with this fill, I've got some options now. So under my appearance, if I click on this, it's going to show me where that is. So if I click on my little swatch, it shows me, okay, I can apply a new swatch. Or if I click on this little color mixer, I can use this to knock down the tint. So it's just a value of it. So I'm going to set this to a little bit lower. I'm going to set it to 70%. I think that looks good. I can click away. Now I've got that Pantone assigned color. I've got a tint of it, so I've got a nice like kind of harmony with my colors. The only thing that's really jumping out with this right now is that as I've kind of got this little guitar pick cover, what I want to do is I want to make that the same as the other ones. So I could just click and select it, or if I select the object, I've got this eyedropper tool. So if I select another object with this selected, I'm going to click with the eyedropper tool on another object, and it'll automatically copy those color attributes, the fill, the tint, the stroke, everything right onto that object. It gives me a nice harmony. So as I take a look at this, I'm going to close my properties here. I've kind of got like a nice little color group here, right? If you take a look in your swatches pane, you've got just a bunch of raw swatches, and then you've got like these little folders where it's like little organized groups of color. What I'm going to do is I want to make these into a color group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with this open, click on and make sure I have everything deselected first, because I don't want to apply this color to anything. I'm going to click on one and hold my shift key so that I have them all selected. And what I can do is I can make these things into a new color group. That'll keep them all organized as their own separate piece. So if I have a little folder icon and ask the color, I'm just going to call these guitar, hit OK. And now it saves all those colors and kind of keeps them all in their own separate little area inside my swatches panel. So again, nothing super crazy, it's just a different way of looking. Now, with that kind of all taken care of, what I want to look at next is how we can take a look at applying color and recoloring objects almost automatically. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this cassette tape selected. I'm going to get this thing in view, and I'm going to use something called the color guide panel. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to first select this green. I like the green. I'm not hot on the yellow, the orange, the gray. I want to kind of keep this like a very complementary kind of like single toned color. So with this object selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to this little color guide thing. Now with this color guide, what this will do is this will let me set this, if I click here once, as a base tint, And now if I click on this drop down, you guys remember from your 103 class, all the different color modes, complementary, analogous, triadic, monochromatic, all those different kind of color wheels and color builds. Well, they're pre-cooked right in Illustrator. Just select the color, set it as your base color for your color model, and then you can take a look at all these different models that are there. The one that I want to use, take a look here. I think I want to do analogous color. I like that. So I'm going to select this. Now, it doesn't do anything to the color. It just sets it as a color model. But if I click this little button down here, I can save this as a color group right into my swatches. So now if I jump back into my swatches, there's that color group that I just selected. Now, with that color group selected, what I want to do is I want to actually recolor this, and I'm going to recolor this thing automatically. The way I'm going to do that is from going up to my properties button here. Notice I have this recolor button. And if I hit this, it's going to ask me how I want to recolor my art. So current colors, well, I don't have everything selected. So what I need to do is I need to make sure now that I have that selected, that one color as a color group. Now when I select it, I want to select all objects. And when I hit recolor, now it's going to find it. So what I'm going to ask it to do is recolor it, not with the original, but with some of my saved artwork. So if I take a look how my colors are all kind of set here, I have this color group 1. So if I select that, now it's going to reset all those colors automatically. And if I want to change them, I can change, like say I don't like the gray, or maybe I didn't like how this went to that color. Well, now from that model, I could preserve it. I could grab different models. I can reset it. And then it recolors all that art right there for me. The same thing it's the same thing we're going to apply onto these sunglasses. And we're going to kind of take a look at using that same object or that same model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my colors, my top sunglasses. I'm going to just select it. It's a group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recolor this to map colors onto there. And again, like kind of doing this like monochromatic look, I want to try and apply that to these sunglasses too. So with that selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my recolor. And if you take a look, I've got like these current colors and I've kind of settings. And what I want to do is I've got all these presets. I've got all these colors that I can set as far as auto. And then I've got this drop down for all the different rules that I can apply to this thing. So what I'm going to do is just from this drop down, I'm going to grab this analogous color and take a look. Now it just automatically applies it. And then number of colors, if I want to turn that up or down, I can add more colors, less. So if here I go to 2 or more, I kind of like it if I'm going down to just one color. So it's going to take that green, it's going to collapse all of them, and it's going to drop them right into this model. And here I've got that nice complementary tone. That's starting to look like all my other pieces. So if I zoom way out, let me fit everything on my artboard so you get, or on my. Now when you take a look at this, now these pieces kind of have a similar tone and feel to them. So again, nothing like super earth shattering, it's just a different way of working with color. But the thing that I really want you guys to think about as a takeaway for this is how easy the color guide is to use to generate these color palettes for yourself. It saves a ton of time. But then also coming in to your swatches and being able to save these things, saving them as global colors to re-edit, to adjust, but also to have them as little groups. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at on this second document, part 2 here. We're going to take this logo and we're going to rebuild this thing and we're going to add some colors. There's already a custom color swatch in there. And we're going to use something called Live Paint to create a custom version of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my background and just slide it out of the way. I don't want this to interfere with anything. And right now it's just one big object. And what I want to do is I want to draw some lines or some paths across this. So I'm going to grab my line segment tool. If you're not seeing yours, it might be under arc or polar grid. Just a straight line. I'm going to press D on my keyboard, or I can double click to set it to just fill of white, stroke of black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start inside of this and I'm going to drag it across the middle all the way to the edge. Now I want my art to go all the way past the edge of this. It's terrible right now, but when I select my Live Paint tool, what it's going to let me do is it's going to let me grab that art and paint inside of there. And hopefully if I do this right, it's actually going to delete some of that color attribute and apply new color to it. So what I'm going to do is come in, grab my Live Paint bucket tool. And if I hover over it, it says click to make a Live Paint group. Okay, I'll click once. All right, so now this is a Live Paint group. Now, see how my icon changed, how it's just kind of black and white? This is where I can use my arrow keys. So what I'm going to do with those arrow keys is I'm going to go left or right, and it looks like it's just cycling through that top one. Now, if I press my down key, you see how now it's all purple? What it's doing is by going up or down or left or right, it's going up and down between the color groups, left or right between the colors themselves. So now I can apply all those colors to it. It separates them all in. And then I can probably go in, and this is looking good. It's doing exactly what I want it to. And then now if I want to go into individual pieces, if I delete that, it goes away. So I'm going to grab this. I'll get zoomed in a little bit so I can see this. And I wanted to make sure it was overlapping the edge so it was caught on there. And now I can shrink this back. Do left and right, top and bottom. And this is a lot faster way than having to build these as all separate shapes. So I can take that, slide it down, looks good. Zoom out, get out of isolation mode and put this back. And there, by using live paint, it's a real quick way of adding color or painting into an object. So now that I'm done both of these, what you can do is, because there's multiple artboards on these, I would recommend saving these as a PDF. So you're going to stop, do a save as command. Make sure you save both of these documents with your last name and a description as a PDF. I'm just going to throw mine onto my desktop. And this is lesson 8, part 2. And I want to make sure my format's set to PDF. See both your artboards when you send me that via email to submit it. We'll save it there. Same thing. I'm going to stop and save as. And I'm going to, again, throw this on the desktop. Lesson 8's good. I'm just going to make sure I got my name in front of it. And save it as a PDF. That looks good. And I'm good to go. So you're going to email me both these documents when you're done with it. And then this week for the extension project, which you're going to be taking a look at, it's just more tracing. Honestly, it's just all about getting some practice in on these. So if you take a look when I download that, I get this part 2 zip. If I pull it open, it's just more of the same. You're going to pull this open. You probably notice a theme on these. What you're going to do is you're going to trace all these logos just like you did last week. Again, same process. Evaluate it first, trace all the lines, select them all, add color to them, group them, slide them over, and you can move on to the next one. Again, work smarter, not harder. Some spots like the inside of like this KD logo, a circle, use your shape tool. Not too bad. And then here you're going to see lots of opportunity for, like, especially like on this LeBron logo, straight lines, converted points, curves. So just like we did last week with the other lesson, as far as just that practice stuff, these are really great ways of just giving you more reps with the pen tool. And then obviously when you're looking at like the NBA and WNBA logos, it's 2 pieces. Trace out all the edges of the gray, trace out all the edges of the black, and then you can kind of just trace out the NBA and AA as separate pieces. Same thing for the WNBA logo. And then for Jumpman, what I recommend doing, really get zoomed in on that. Really make sure you can see the edges, like how his armband is part of the logo. So as you're going around, just kind of moving slow, a little bit at a time, knocking it all out. I promise you this will be the last of the tracing, but this is kind of the eating your vegetables design. Once you get good at using the pen tool, it's going to make you a much better designer long term. So that's what I got for you guys for this week. As always, if you have questions, shoot me via email or jump into office hours. And if anything else comes up, let me know.